Today, we review this term's most notable Supreme Court cases and discuss what the rulings mean going forward. It all starts right now. Welcome to the news and why it matters. I am Sarah Gonzalez, today joined by Stu Burguiere, host of Stu Does America, which is having another Power Hour. What is it? Next
week.
Friday.
Yeah,
a week from today. And look, if you've tuned in the past, you know they can get a little crazy. So make sure that
you've been recruited.
Yeah.
Again?
Yeah.
For you've been to all of them.
Yes.
But you were the designated driver for the first one.
I
because
was.
you were pregnant. And now you can do the full Power Hour with us for the first time, which I've understood you've agreed to.
No,
so
no. I thought I was still.
We have your signature on a piece of paper.
It wasn't me.
I can't confirm or deny whether it was you. We have a lawyer right here.
That would be really, really. You don't want that, okay? Let me just tell you. You thought it was bad with Chad. Let me just tell you.
I did think it was bad with Chad. Yes, I did.
We also have. I'm so excited. He is back with us, Jeremy Dice, who is special counsel over at First Liberty. And I messaged you the other day because I was like, I saw your face right there, front and center on the Daily Wire's breaking news. Because, of course, you were one of the lawyers involved in this Supreme Court case with Coach Kennedy. And I messaged you like, oh, my gosh, I'm so excited for you guys. So I'm glad that you were able to make it today.
I'm here to provide sober analysis.
Yes, and possibly talk of Ernest.
Yes, of course. I am as has been said on national radio, I'm the leading expert on Ernest matters.
You are Ernest enthusiast himself, Jeremy Dice.
Guy that follows me around. That's great.
So let's talk about that case first, since
the
obviously
Ernest case or just making sure I know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Because you were heavily involved in this one. Supreme Court handed a win to this is former Washington high school football coach who lost his job over reciting a prayer on the 50-yard line after games. And at issue was whether a public school employee praying alone but in view of students was engaging in unprotected government speech. And if it's not government speech, does it still pose a problem under the First Amendment's Establishment Clause? The Supreme Court ruled on this 6-3 that the answer to both of those questions is no. Jeremy, I'm going to let you kind of take the reins here because I'm talking about it and I'm like, I feel underqualified to talk about it when the guy who handled the case was right here.
It's a great case. In fact, I just sent Coach Kennedy to the airport, so I've spent the entire week with him. He's been here. We've been celebrating.
We met him. He was lovely.
7 years in the making almost now. 2015 is when this thing happened. Coach Kennedy made a commitment back in 2008 that when he was going to be a football coach, he would take a knee in private prayer by himself at the 50-yard line following every football game that he coached, win or lose. He did that, started it. Some kids took notice. They said, hey, Coach, can we pray with you? What are you doing? He said, I'm praying. Could we join you? He goes, look, it's a free country. Because he didn't want to encourage. He couldn't discourage. He was kind of stuck. And so sometimes the kids would come out. They got beat by like 40 points. They wouldn't come out. So it's just beat himself. And so for 8 years or seven years, he would be there praying at the 50-yard line. And then somebody in 2015, an opposing team, complimented the school district about what was going on the 50-yard line. It wasn't a complaint. It was actually a compliment. And a proof that no good deed goes unpunished. The school district does an investigation. They find out that he's doing this. They say, look, you got to stop that. You can't be praying with the kids. There's some back and forth. We got involved. And the coach was like, look, I get it. I may have my points of agreement or disagreement. Doesn't matter. Your rules, whatever. I'll stop praying with the kids. He stops. He never goes back to praying with the students ever again. But he says, I'm going to go back to what I used to do. I'm just going to do this by myself. The kids will be somewhere else. I want to do this by myself. They basically said that's not good enough. And it took a little bit of time, but eventually they suspend him. When they suspend him, they issue a statement and they say, here's the results of our investigation. There is no evidence of any student ever being coerced into praying with Coach Kennedy. Should have been the end of it right there, but it wasn't. They fire him after that suspension because he could be seen engaged in a religious activity in view of the students, and that was sufficient to cause coercion. So this is like coercion by sight idea here. So fast forward, we finally get to the Supreme Court of the United States after we lost 5 times. Yeah, that's not a great record right there, but we win the one that matters. We win before the Supreme Court on Monday. Justice Gorsuch says, look, this is just a simple religious activity here. You guys forgot about the free exercise clause and the free speech clause. Oh, and that you can't fire people because they're religious.
Right.
You committed all three of those things. You violated his free exercise rights by using the Establishment Clause to beat him up with it. You violated his free speech rights when he started to talk about it. And because he was religious, you fired him. Well, that's discrimination too. So Coach Kennedy did nothing wrong. The school district there did everything completely wrong. They're the ones that engaged in discrimination. There's a lot more to say about that case, but the bottom line is that the court said to every school district in the country, you have to show respect for religious activity like this. If it's a coach taking a knee in prayer, wearing a crucifix around their neck, they've got ash on their forehead after Ash Wednesday, they're wearing a yarmulke, a hijab, whatever it might be, you can't fire people because they engage in a simple act of religious expression like that.
I am, Stu, I want to get your thoughts on this, but I'm so... I feel like I'm very discouraged that it took that many courts saying no. You know what I mean?
Well, don't forget it was the Ninth Circuit after all.
Well, right. But you said you lost, what, 5 times?
5 times.
It just seems preposterous to me that, this seems like such a cut and dry case here. I'm a little concerned that you lost that many times.
The attorneys, the school district's actually they're good friends with the coach, and it's been kind of awkward, obviously. His wife was the HR director, to give you sort of a sense of that, right? He had to sue his wife, right? But the attorneys got involved, and the school district hired the Americans United for Separation of Church and State to represent them. They've got their own agenda on this, and they created some facts that weren't exactly reality, and the Supreme Court bought the correct facts, the ones that were actually in reality. The Ninth Circuit kind of helped them out as well, saying that kind of confusing the facts and conflating it with student prayer and all that just didn't happen. And so by the time we got to the Supreme Court, they finally got to the bottom line of what actually occurred here and realized that this is just a coach praying by himself. This should not be surprising to anybody. And what's more, the Supreme Court did away with one of the worst cases in our modern history called Lemon versus Kurtzman. That case is now finally dead. Justice Scalia used to describe that as a ghoul that walks about at midnight, only dying once, only to be resurrected later on and walk around as if it's the undead. And we finally have interred the Lemon test. That ghoul is gone. So what that means right now for coaches and teachers is that they have the right to bring their constitutional rights through the schoolhouse gates, which is big enough in and of itself. But on top of all that, we're going to be able to use this precedent in a broad array of circumstances. No longer can someone say, well, I can see you engage in religious activity. I can see religious language on the wall over there. I can see a religious memorial over there. And then the Establishment Clause means you got to cut it down, shut it up, or whatever it might be. That's gone. Now they have to actually prove, well, that is actually causing me to be coerced, or they have to prove that it's against the history of our country and how we express religion in the public square. All of that is now reset thanks to the Supreme Court. It's a very big decision.
Yeah, huge still.
Well, congratulations on the greatest 1-5 record of all time. It really is an amazing thing. And I've been doing radio with Pat this week, and as these cases have been coming down, and I've gushed over First Liberty Institute several times because the work you guys have done, it's not just this case, I know we'll get to some of the others as we go, but it's been incredible. This organization has pushed for religious freedom and won over and over and over and over again. COVID is another one that we've talked about before, where you guys push back on the limitations the government was trying to.
Actually, we have attorneys right now deposing the #2 admiral in the Navy in that case. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah,
as we're sitting here talking.
It sounds like fun. Wow. It sounds like fun. It's interesting because this case, I think, quite clearly illustrates the fact, which has always been true, but is now clarified, that your religion doesn't stop when you walk out of your house or out of your church. I know Anna Navarro was on TV and she said she was Catholic when she was at church, which I don't know. Now she can be Catholic outside those doors, which would be nice.
I actually don't think she wants to be Catholic.
I don't think she wants to be either.
Yeah.
But you brought up the yarmulke example, which is a really profound one. Can you imagine if this country tried to say to a Jewish teacher, hey, you can't wear your yarmulke in class? I can imagine it, but hopefully now that there's a nice big brick wall there so that these places won't attempt this stuff anymore. And if they do attempt it, it'll be shot down immediately by the lower courts. It's a huge advance for our country. I want to say advance for our country. It's resetting what is reality. It's what it's supposed to be the whole time.
Yeah, people have not understood that we are more free today than we were on Monday morning. And they've bought the separation of church and state idea for so long, they've forgotten what it actually really means. And Justice Gorsuch put that to right. One of my favorite, social media has been great to watch this week in on many respects, but especially in this case, people have been melting down. And they try to do this sort of own that is popular on Twitter. Like, well, this would have been a totally different outcome if it had been Muslim winning or Jewish or whatever. Like, you know what? You're actually right. It would have been a completely different outcome. It would have been 9-0 at the Supreme Court, not 6-3.
Actually, it never would have happened because no one would dare do that to a Muslim or someone else. Like the school would have never even treated them that way,
and to be clear,
and they still have their job.
To be very clear, if Coach Kennedy had been Muslim or Buddhist or any other, I would have been on an earlier flight to go represent him because he deserves it as much as anybody else does. Religious liberty for one faith tradition is religious liberty for all of them. So we protect them all.
Yeah, some blue check on Twitter, I can't remember who it was, tweeted something to the effect of like, oh, well, this clears the way for people to chant Allah Akbar in the stands. And it's like, sure does. I mean, this shouldn't be responsible. They could always do that.
Right.
But yeah, that's absolutely protected. The left loves to do that. They think, because they have built up in their minds what they think the real reasons for us promoting these things are. When we talk about stuff like the Second Amendment, for example, they are sure that they just want white people to be able to shoot black people or something. And then they say, well, what if black people were to have guns? And we say, yes, amen, they can. It's constitutionally guaranteed. We'd love that. The same thing here. You know what? If it doesn't matter what your religion is, that's not how the country was not founded to say only this religion can exist. It's supposed to be protected for everybody, and it is now, at least closer than it has been in a long time.
So I want to go into one of your other cases, Jeremy, which was the last week, the one on Maine. And schools, and tell us about that one.
Yeah, so out of Maine had this weird policy. Well, Maine has kind of a rural population, right? So they don't have, it doesn't make sense for them to build schools in every single town because they're so spread out. And so instead of doing that, they've made the decision that they would just simply give vouchers. They give money to the parents to be able to send their kids wherever they want. They want to send them down to public school, the money follows the kid. They want to send them to private school, the money follows the kid over there. Fine. Except then Maine said, but you can't actually, you can use that money at any private school unless they're religious and they actually believe what they teach. And so they said you can't do that. And so we had to take them again back to the Supreme Court. Again, a case you wouldn't think should have to go to the Supreme Court to figure this out.
Right.
I loved how the justices wrote about this, said, we've been really clear on this point multiple times that you can't do this, right? As recently as last term, and in the case called Our Lady of Guadalupe, and then before that, Espinoza and others all say the same thing. If you're going to give money out like this, if you're going to make a general benefit program available, you can't say, well, you can send it to, the local private school that is secular or whatever the name of the local public school is. But if they want to go to John Paul II Catholic school, well, hold on a second, we can't send the money over there because that would be an establishment of religion. Now, see, people get this completely backwards, and Coach Kennedy's a great example of that. Justice Sotomayor in her dissent talks a lot about the separation of church and state. Well, let's stop and remember, number one, that's not in the Constitution. That's extra constitutional, if you will. But let's deal with the concept. Well, the concept is really two different institutions going against each other, the church and the state, right? Well, in Kennedy's case, just like in Maine, there's no church. There's only the state. There's the state against individuals. And in Kennedy's case, you had the state coming down hard on the individual. Little old Joe Kennedy got fired for doing what? Freely exercising his faith. Well, the Free Exercise Clause thankfully protected him in that. Same thing in Maine. You've got parents, little old parents that are in the middle of nowhere, Maine, that had the state come down and saying, well, no, you can't exercise your faith that way. You can't have your kids learning at the dinner table the same thing they learn in the school building. That would be misappropriating funds or whatever. So, hey, you know what? 2 wins of religious liberty by our firm in the same week.
Yeah.
And we've had a pretty good June.
Yeah, it really is huge.
Yeah, I'm glad the separation of church and state is finally getting this, the beat down it deserves. The foundation of this is what, a letter? It's like a letter from like Jefferson to a pastor. And the pastor was concerned about the other way around. He wasn't concerned about the state or the church squashing the state. He was worried about the state squashing the church. So it is really like I don't even know if the left believes this stuff at times. You know, I mean, you look at people like Sotomayor, who, again, like Kagan is very liberal, but like seems to have a grasp on the various issues in front of her in most cases. Sotomayor, at times, I just can't. She seems to be in a totally different category. I don't even know. I mean, it almost seems like fan service, like a liberal, fanfare, constantly. But like this is a case where the Maine one's a really interesting one, and I like it. Not only for religious freedom, but just for private education as well, which I'm a big supporter of. So, I mean, I actually like the policy quite a bit in Maine.
Agreed.
As long as it's if it's spread out to religious schools as well.
As a policy matter, every state legislature should be moving very quick right now to give the money to the kids, let them go where they want to go.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Neither of the defendants in these cases seem to have gotten the full message and the import of these cases. In the case of Carson v. Macon, the case in Maine, the Attorney General came out and basically said, well, that may be, but if they don't support the SOGI laws, if they don't have a non-discrimination statement that's sufficient, then they can't have our money either. So we may have to go back to the Supreme Court all over again based upon the fact that some of these schools, like the Christian schools, don't agree to the non-discrimination statements and laws that are required of other institutions in the state of Maine. So that may get restarted itself.
Jeez.
In Washington, we're sitting by the phone all week waiting to find out when Coach has got to show back up for two-a-days, right? We've had no call so far. Like, this case is over. There's no remand in this case. It's reversed and they're directed to have summary judgment for Coach. So he's entitled to his relief. What relief did he want? He didn't ask for back pay. He wanted reinstatement. So make me a coach again and let me pray on the 50-yard line when I get back there. So we're still waiting to find out when he's got to be back up and up there for practice with his team.
I think this has been one of the most fascinating parts about this is because we talked to Jeremy and Coach Kennedy when they were in town. In fact, we're going to air some of that tonight on SCOTUS America. If you haven't seen it, it's worth hearing the whole story. But what I found fascinating about him, it was like he didn't hate these people at the school. He kept defending them. I was going after them, and he kept defending them. He's like, actually, they're pretty good people, and we really do like them. He was really, he does seem to actually really want his job back.
Yeah.
And but you don't. Are you skeptical as to whether you get that phone call?
No, there's no option around this. He'll be back on the field. We'll just have to figure out how much that's going to cost the school.
Well, you'll have to keep us posted on that. We were talking about the state of schooling in this country. It's a perfect time to thank our sponsor, Freedom Project Education. So, look, if you watch this program, you are no stranger to the idea that these leftist crazy people are indoctrinating your children into sexually charged literature, propaganda on kids as young as 5. You've got CRT going on, and there are even reports of teachers secretly hosting drag shows for students, of course, without the consent of the parents. If you want a real education for your child and you can't find it in your state, you need Freedom Project Academy. They've got live online learning. They've been doing it since way before COVID, so they have it perfected. They are built on Judeo-Christian values and classical curriculum, and they're going to teach your children how to think, not what to think. All right, you got to go to freedomforschool.com. Get your child enrolled before spots fill up, and they are filling up. That is freedomforschool.com. Yesterday, the Supreme Court limited the power of the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, say that 3 times fast, to regulate greenhouse gas emissions from power plants. This is obviously a pretty big blow to Joe Biden's climate change agenda. And the court was divided 6-3, obviously along ideological lines, in finding that Congress, through the Clean Air Act, did not grant the EPA the authority to adopt on its own a regulatory scheme to cap carbon dioxide emissions from power plants to combat global warming. This was Chief Justice John Roberts who wrote the majority opinion. And again, I mean, we know who dissented. So I really do love winning.
It is more fun.
It is really fun.
More fun. Yeah.
I love it.
I'm so used to losing in the Supreme Court. My entire life has been nonstop losing.
So listen, Trump was like, "You're gonna get tired of all the winning," and I was like, "I don't know." And I'm not tired of it though.
I'm not tired. He's wrong. Donald Trump was wrong on that. I'm not tired of it at all. He deserves a lot of credit, as we've talked about before, for his 3 picks who have been on the right side of most of these things. There was another case on his border policy where Kavanaugh was on the other side.
We're going to talk about that
We'll
later.
get to that here in a little bit.
Yeah.
But this is a huge one. In fact, this is not the biggest case
Right.
of this Supreme Court session. Obviously, you know, you talk about
Obviously,
Roe v. Wade.
Jeremy's
cases were huge. The Second Amendment case was huge. But, you know, not everybody owns a gun. I am not at any point soon planning on getting an abortion. That was not going to happen.
Really?
Yep. I think we're clear of that one. You know, I'm not, you know, no one gets mad at me when I say God on the air here at the Blaze. So, like, a lot of this stuff doesn't hit everybody, right? Mm-hmm. This one does. This case, this EPA case, is massive for every single thing that the government tries to do to you. It really does limit, and I think it's going to be, I read it as pretty broad. I kind of wish, if you read the Gorsuch concurring opinion, it's even better, in my opinion. He seemed to even want to go farther. But Roberts was pretty good, too. This limits the right of the administrative state to take little indications of intent and blow them up into massive economy and life-changing alteration. That is huge. I mean, this was a terrible, and it's once again another lesson. We see Obama, the same thing with the Mississippi case, where the left tries to push, and grab all the power that they can. And, you know, now it's really hurt them. I mean, you know, Harry Reid, back in 2013, comes through and says, hey, we're going to get rid of the judicial filibuster. Well, that led to this. That led to all the winning you're talking about. He's as responsible as Donald Trump in some ways for this. And now you look at the case with the EPA. Obama knew he couldn't do this. He knew it. He knew he couldn't do this. He went through all of these years saying he needed to get it through Congress. Congress needs to do this. Congress needs to do this. And then he decided, since Congress wouldn't do it, he'd just do it himself. He'd find a little loophole and get it done. And even though that rule that he tried when he was president has been overturned, you know, Trump got rid of it. Yeah. It's going to wind up costing them a massive source of their power. And that is, I'm excited about that.
If people are upset by this, right, they're upset by the Dobbs decision or even the Carson and the Kennedy decisions or the New York Gun and Rifle Association decisions, they're all upset. The left is really bothered by the activism of the Supreme Court. Let us quickly remind them that they have the House, they have the Senate, they have the White House. Why haven't they solved it? Maybe there's a reason why those two branches of the government, those three different houses in the White House, why haven't they resolved that? I mean, they've got the ability to provide the left's nirvana right now, and they're upset by the Supreme Court not doing that for them. Maybe there's a reason why they keep those things in limbo so that people are angry and more power is accumulated in Washington. Look, the right does the same thing, and I don't like that either. But, I mean, right now, they could do something about it. Why don't they do something about that? Which brings us then to the reason why these cases are so good and why this EPA decision is so good. It has reined in the overreach of the state. Just to kind of think about this, right? Think about baseball in this regard, right? Congress says we want the game of baseball to be played. The president says, good, I'll sign it into law, give it to my agencies to figure out the rules of the game. That means that every bat's got to be measured. They've got to come up with a rule for how long your bat can be, how soft the ball can be, how big your glove can be, how high the grass can be, what size the lines are going to be, how far the fences are going to be out there. There's a lot of deference within that is given to all that, but it's got to stay within the main body of the rules of baseball itself. It has to still be baseball. You can't put goalposts out in center field because that's football. You can't make the grass filled with ice and say, well, we know better about what baseball actually is. No, that's not baseball. That's hockey. You're not allowed to do that kind of thing. And the administrative state has grown to so big and so large that it's effectively ignoring Congress to say, we're going to actually figure out what this game of baseball is. And pretty soon you've got basketball nets and hockey goals and ballet slippers out in center field because they think that they know better about what the game of baseball actually is. In other words, you got Rob Manfred. So,
do you know, Jeremy, is there anyone? Because in talking about this case, it makes me think of the CDC when they just decided that there was going to be a rent, moratorium during COVID. Is anyone suing over that? Because I would love to see that one.
About the moratorium? I don't know about that. That's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, since when does the CDC have the right to make these decisions? It would be really great to have that played out and have a precedent set that they totally abused their power.
One leads to the other, quite obviously, right? And there's a big news this week also out of the nation of New Zealand, right? That they're now taxing the burps of sheep and cows, right? They've somehow come up with this mathematical figure that allows them to put a per tax capita. I don't know, but I mean, we're a hop, skip, and a burp away from that to be able to that happening here if you allow the administrative state to do what they want.
And to your point on the CDC, if I remember right, the Supreme Court did step in on that case and limit it. Yeah, and they did the same thing. They smacked down the vaccination, a lot of the vaccination stuff as well.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
I didn't remember the Supreme. Okay.
Yeah, I think they did step in.
I trust you more than me.
Jeremy will probably.
I can't remember. I've been busy this week.
You've had some other stuff going on. But this is, I think, from a broad perspective, it does do exactly what you're saying. It means that these agencies cannot do this anymore. As you point out, Jeremy, they can play with the length of the bat. They can play with, the width of the stripe going down the foul line. They cannot change it from baseball to hockey. Anything big needs to go through Congress. And guess what? That's what's supposed to happen. Fundamentally, what we've seen this week with this ruling and the Supreme Court rulings and opinions that have been issued over the past few weeks is an overturning of this alternate form of government that the left has created, where they have said, look, what we'll do is we'll give all the power to these administrative, unelected bureaucrats in the administrative state so they can run the country from Woodrow Wilson's dream back in the day, and they can run it that way, and when they go afoul and obviously break rules, we'll have the Supreme Court there to say it's okay. And they've had this going for themselves for so freaking long, we barely even notice it anymore. And finally, we're at a place where that has been pushed back and put back in its place. And I think you're going to see a lot. I mean, this is going to be wide-ranging through these agencies. I'm really excited about what might come out of this because, the fact that it was Roberts writing it, as I mentioned, the Gorsuch concurrence was kind of more exciting. And a lot of times they are. Yeah. The dissents are sometimes exciting when you're on the losing side. But the fact that Roberts is there, and Roberts has been pretty good on this and pretty good on religious liberty, honestly. We bash him a lot, but he was pretty good at least this term.
Well, rightfully so.
Yes, but the fact that he's there shows that there's six, right? This is he believes this too, and if they try to challenge it, which they will, they'll try to get away with stuff. There should be the votes there to keep smacking them down over and over again, at least for a while.
Yeah,
and it's also going to go to the benefit of the citizenry as well. That's why you're seeing the left on Twitter and other places mind-boggled by this whole thing. It's like that scene from, Bug's Life, where the leaf falls in the middle of the line of ants. They've been following this idea of separation of church and state or Roe v. Wade for so long. Yeah. Now they're out of line. They don't know what to do with it. I'm lost. This is supposed to be my worldview, way of thinking, and it's been completely disrupted. Well, it actually hasn't been disrupted. You just bought into what the other side has fed you for so long that you've actually believed that that's what the Constitution says. Yeah. That there is actually words of separation of church and state in the First Amendment, but there isn't.
Right.
And so you need to go back and figure out what the Constitution actually does say and what it now means to our lives. When you figure that out, by the way, friends on the left, you'll love this country. It's really cool. Yeah. It's a great freedom-loving place.
Yeah. Okay, so funnily enough, Jeremy, our sponsor, is First Liberty.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I gotta say, if you appreciate and love the work that this guy right here is doing, what you need to do is go over to First Liberty's website. They're just asking you to sign a letter to say no to the Supreme coup. The Supreme Court coup is what they're calling it. They talk about court packing all the time. The left does.
Yeah, what was it? 10 seconds after Roe versus Wade, we had Elizabeth Warren on TV saying they want to add justices so they can start winning. It's
not like conspiracy theory. They literally are talking about this right now, trying to figure out how they can rig the system. And obviously that's going to be completely catastrophic. So we don't want to let that happen. That is why First Liberty is asking you to sign their letter to say no to court packing. They're trying to gather 1 million patriots to do it. You can go to supremecoup.com. That is supremecoup.com. All right, now we're going to talk about a not so great outcome from the Supreme Court that has happened this week. The Supreme Court ruled in a 5-4 decision that the Biden administration can repeal President Trump's migrant protection protocols. This is the Remain in Mexico policy, is what it's commonly referred to as. This was reversing a lower court ruling. Under the policy, of course, migrants who are seeking entry to the United States had to stay in Mexico as they waited for their hearing. But as we know, the Biden administration does in fact want open borders and complete chaos. So they decided to reverse and repeal that policy. It was previously blocked by a lower court. And this is not the one you want to lose. Like, I'm trying to be appreciative of the victories that we got on religious liberty and the Second Amendment. And, the climate change BS, but this one really hurts. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, it's a rough one, and I don't know exactly where this is going to go from here. This was sort of the arrangement of the court that every conservative has worried about since the very beginning, with the three liberals, Roberts and Kavanaugh, and 5-4 decision. As a form of, I'd love to get Jeremy's thoughts on the constitutionality of all this and how this went down. But as far as a policy goes, it's obviously a good one. It's obviously the correct policy in my mind. Having a border that's completely out of control, and the fact that we negotiated with Mexico and Mexico agreed to this, it's a really sensible solution. There's no reason why this, as a policy matter, should go away. Now, the way it was implemented initially was through the Trump administration. And a lot of times the problem with doing, with executive action like this is that the next president can come in and overturn it. And so, of course, Biden came in and wanted to do it. That got blocked at the lower court level. Am I right on that, Jeremy?
I think it's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's... But
if we're going to be consistent with the case we talked about previously to this one, you kind of have to say, well, shucks, it did go back and forth, and it should go back and forth, which is, again, what we'll come back to what I said to the left, right? You have the House, you have the Senate, you have the presidency. The right had that too during this whole time, and they did nothing with it. So maybe I don't know, be statesman here instead.
That's a great point. That it's just that the executive branch doesn't have the power to do this.
Yeah, and honestly, that's kind of the way I actually thought this one would probably be go Biden's way. But I've been spending so much time on these other cases. I haven't really, dove into this one as well.
Same.
The fact that I see, you have a much better excuse than I do. But the fact that you have Alito and Thomas and Amy Coney Barrett and Gorsuch on one side of it makes me think that's probably the right side.
Yeah.
But which is kind of, I think the lesson that the conservatives can learn from this is that you also have to you have to jump over these same hurdles whenever possible. Executive action does something, there's a lot of executive action during the Trump administration that we liked, right? There's a lot of things that aligned with us policy-wise, but they're ethereal, unfortunately, and they do go away. This case is one of those examples. I don't know that even this policy, to be fair, however, could reverse the catastrophe on our border because of all the other policies that Biden's has already been able to overturn. So I don't know how much of a difference this particular thing is going to make to our border situation. It's going to be really, really bad or really, really bad. And so, this would have made it a little bit better, a little bit more of a sort of a menu of options for our border guards to deal with these types of problems. But even with it, I don't think you're going to be able to stop all of this other stuff going on.
It may in a very weird way, and I'm going to stay in my lane as a First Amendment attorney and not opine too much on that law. But as a citizen, I'll just say it this way, that it may be the thing that we actually need to finally for the court to say, okay, y'all got to figure it out, right? The policy way of doing things, as Obama said, the pen and the phone, that's not the right way to go about doing this. So how about the Congress do something? That's a novel idea, that we can actually pass a law on this. We may actually have to compromise on the right, may have to actually compromise on the left to do something that actually puts a border on our southern border. Go ahead and do that kind of. That's okay for us to do. It's sort of like the Dobbs decision, too, that says, Roe v. Wade is gone, but that doesn't mean that the question of abortion is morally resolved all of a sudden. That just kicks it back down to the states. It resets the clock to 1972, so we can just go back and have that conversation. But any state can come with a different solution. The same thing here. Hey, this is not the right way of going about doing this policy, right or wrong. And if you believe that right or left, I'm not going to pine on that. We have lawmakers for a reason, and you want to change the Constitution, we have a way to do that. You can actually amend that thing. You can actually do that. Our founders kind of knew what they were talking about when they created this organization called government. We should actually try to use it sometime.
It is frustrating, though, especially when you live in a place like Texas, because the Biden administration, I mean, to Greg, I don't like to give Greg Abbott much credit, but to his credit, he has tried to do, AG Ken Paxton, who I do like to give a lot of credit to because I love him. But they have tried doing things, taking matters into their own hands here in the state, and the Biden administration fights them tooth and nail every time they do try to do something like that.
Yeah, and I do think that is going to backfire politically for the Biden administration. Yeah. It certainly is helping the Abbott campaign right now, and the good numbers for Paxton as well in that regard. But Biden has gotten, well, he's not going to flip the state. Let's just put it that way in 2024. It's not going to go well in the state of Texas. And I don't think most of the rest of the country feels any different. I think they feel the same way, that, hey, wait, you have a responsibility to actually ensure we have a country.
Right.
And he's not doing it.
Yeah, so because of you're not only derelict of your duty, you're tying our hands behind our backs so we can't take matters into our own hands. Like, that doesn't seem right. All right, we got to take another quick break. First, we want to thank new sponsor of the program. I'm really excited about this one. It is Moms for Liberty. So if you are, and listen, they're not, if you're a dad, listen up too, because anyone can join. But if you're worried about the state of education in this country, we talked about it earlier. They've got CRT, SEL, a whole bunch of stuff that you don't want your children learning in schools. That is why there is Moms of Liberty. In only 18 months, they have grown to over 200 chapters in 37 states. Gee, I wonder why. Maybe it's because of all of the COVID crap that was going on, and all of these parents went, you know what? We've had enough. This year, from July 14th through the 17th, they are going to be in Tampa, Florida. They will be hosting the Moms for Liberty Joyful Warrior National Summit. You can attend the summit. It'll give you tools in your toolbox to create the positive change that you want to see in your community. They've got keynote speakers that are like Governor Ron DeSantis. We love him here. Florida First Lady Casey DeSantis, Dr. Ben Carson, and so much more. Moms for Liberty is dedicated to fighting for the survival of America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. You got to go there and check them out. It is momsforliberty.org/Sarah. Go and join them. Look, if you agree with me on all of the school stuff, I know you watch my program, you don't co-parent with the government, you want to join them. momsforliberty.org/Sarah. We mentioned it earlier. Last week, the Supreme Court struck down a New York state law requiring applicants for a license to carry a gun outside of their homes to have a proper cause to do so. Obviously, it violated the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution, which, we keep talking about. And I'm wondering, as we're going through all of these cases, if certain members of the left have ever actually read it.
The Constitution?
Yeah. I don't know if they have.
No.
I'm really, certainly the government of New York.
I went all the way through constitutional law in law school. 2 separate classes, Con Law 1 and Con Law 2. Never read the Constitution.
Really?
Never did. Never read it.
Wait, what?
That's consistent across almost all law schools. I promise you, it was not a textbook for the course.
What?
I'm telling you.
Wait, but hold on a second. Okay. What did you learn? Like, what did they teach you?
Now,
then?
you read case law that quotes from the Constitution, hope, but you never read the actual Constitution itself. Isn't that crazy?
That is
really crazy.
Blew my mind.
That's both disappointing and enlightening, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know how to feel or how to process my emotions right now.
Yeah, and very few law schools actually do prescribe that as a text of the class. And everybody has to take a common law course.
That makes so much sense.
I am
now.
a way downer in this discussion.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I don't even know where to go with this.
Way down in this
I'm not sure what to say. I'm like aghast. It does seem like something that would be central to what you're doing.
This is why you need to go to firstliberty.org and download a copy of the Constitution or wherever you can find it. Follow us on our mailings so that you at least know what the First Amendment says,
right?
And then you can kind of branch out from there. So with that little caveat, go back to the show.
I will point out when you're talking about amendments, it is that it's the first one on the docket, so you can get that one done right away. Just read it, let it soak in. and it'll be very easy.
And if you're excited by that one, go to the next one.
Next one's great too. The third one about having troops stay in your home is
never gets enough attention.
Never
gets enough. Went through an entire term with no Third Amendment cases again.
It never happens. And I keep trying to, every once in a while, I'm like, this is going to be my big cause. No one's talking about it. I'm going to start my own organization defending the Third Amendment, but no one ever seems to challenge
Third
it.
Liberty Institution.
Yeah, there we go. I like it. Look, I think the Second Amendment case in New York was a huge one, a huge win. Again, to me, these are things that seem pretty obvious. Just like you can be Catholic outside of your church, you can also carry your firearm and execute your Second Amendment rights outside of your home. Seems pretty obvious to me, but apparently not. And I think like the New York law in particular, and it was six other states, I believe, had the same or very similar one. Is there 8 total? I thought it was 7 total, but it's something like that. Maybe DC is the one we're not talking about. But the idea that it was a may issue as far as your license to go and carry as opposed to shall issue. And the may issue was like, okay, well, if you come up with a great reason, and I've summarized it that way several times, you got to come up with a good reason to get your, but it's not even that. It was worse than that. It was you had to come up with an extraordinary reason, a reason that more than just like you're working late at night in a dangerous area, which you shouldn't need to come up with any reason. The point of it being a right is that you do not have to justify it. If you have to justify it, it is not a right. And here's a situation where the court properly recognized, thank you, Clarence Thomas, saying that this is not a secondary, this isn't like, in the ash heap here, this isn't a second level right, it's not another kind of amendment that doesn't really count in most situations. It's a constitutional right just like the others, and it was honored in that way, and it has been now at different levels in 3 straight major gun cases. I still think there's a lot to do, though, on this issue. I think it goes farther than this, and I hope they get more cases, especially when the court looks like this.
I made a really bad decision last week in that I went on vacation. Well, actually, I had to go to a niece's wedding, so that was a great decision, but she made a bad choice about when to get married. Yeah. And I don't hold that against her at all. Love you, Hannah. But I did peek at this decision last week, and I caught one paragraph. Remember, this is by Justice Thomas, who's notably an African-American justice sitting on the Supreme Court of the United States. That's important to this discussion because he's got this great paragraph that goes back, a prologue is in order for this, which is just a great way to start a phrase, but a prologue is in order for this opinion. And he goes back and talks about the Dred Scott decision, and he quotes from Judge Taney, in that horrid decision. And I'm going to paraphrase now, but Justice Taney basically says, look, if we were to do what Dred Scott wants us to do here, then they would be entitled to all the rights under the Constitution, and that includes carrying a weapon concealed. So, I mean...
They were making the same argument the left is making on Twitter now.
Right. Oh, no. The African-American population would actually be entitled to the Constitution. Right. That's kind of frightening. Yeah. That's what they were saying in Dred Scott. No, this is a great thing. You're right, Stu, that the Constitution doesn't make you come up with, or the Bill of Rights doesn't make you come up with an extraordinary reason to be able to exercise your Second Amendment rights, or for that matter, let's not let that plague spread. Do I have to give an actual reason, like an extraordinary reason why I can worship somewhere?
Right.
No, it's not a right if you have to come up with that idea.
Would I have to give an extraordinary reason so that soldiers would not be quartered in my home? Join Third Liberty Institute today.
We gotta take a break. We'll be back. I love this.
That was not the segment you were playing.
Just a programming note, we will, of course, be gone on Monday. It is, in fact, the 4th of July. So
Lazy.
Happy Independence Day. Do you have a show on Monday?
Yeah, on demand. Just check it
well,
out.
in that case, me too.
Oh, okay, good.
But also Tuesday and Wednesday, I'm actually taking time off. So we will not be here Monday,
Lazy.
Tuesday, Wednesday. You know what? That's fine. You can call me that. But we will be back.
I don't have a show any of those days.
Thursday. Are you guys doing anything fun for the 4th?
Gosh, I don't know the next thing I'm doing as soon as I leave here, other than doing my show tonight. That's the way my life works. Lisa, my wife, will tell me what I'm doing next.
I'm going to go hang out with my kids because I haven't seen them all week. I've been talking to people like you all week, and it's great. But my people are much better than your people.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
I'm sorry, my people are much better than you people.
I'm sure he's right. I'm sure he's right.
Yeah, you probably are right. Well, we're going to be going to the lake for some nice relaxation, because what else is there to do in Texas during the summer other than be by a body of water that you can cool yourself off in? And again, don't forget, Stu Does America, 500th episode anniversary Power Hour.
Yeah, so it's a very catchy name.
Yeah, I don't, it rolls off the tongue, I feel.
Thank you.
It's July 8th, so that is a week from now. Make sure to tune in. StuDoesPowerHour.com?
Yeah, check it out.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Get there, Sarah.
Oh my gosh, that's going to be a heck of a time. And I just want to say it for the record, I designated driver, sort of.
Sort of.
A little bit. I don't, ish. Okay.